Welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and today we continue our play of Nemesis Retaliation from Awaken Realms. It's coming to GameFound very, very soon. Specifics for that in the pinned comment and video description. If you haven't checked out the previous series to this point, I've got a prototype unboxing out for you. I have a how to setup and also part number 1. You'll absolutely want to watch part number 1 first to understand where we're at right now. And if you remember from part number 1, we had the Queen show up as a nice surprise at the very tail end of that video. In order to be successful at this mission, we need to complete perimeter clearing, and it states the reactor must be shut down and all basic rooms A must be explored. We had the second half of that already completed. Let's try and find the reactor, although the Queen just showed up as I mentioned, so that could throw a wrench into things. We're heading into round number 4. Now let's go ahead and move the first player marker and also draw up to 5 cards. The first player marker has moved from the heavy gun operator to the Recon character, sits right here, and now we're going to draw 5 cards up for each of them. Cards are drawn up, let's begin actions. But first, let's focus on the Queen as she entered the scene at the very end of part number 1. She is a different entity altogether, which is no surprise. She's also going to be more dangerous and harder to kill than typical intruders. And in most cases, the Queen is going to be treated as an intruder for all the standard rules. So basically, in most cases, you're going to be doing things with the Queen that you would typically do with the intruders. But there are some exceptions. And the main one is that the Queen can be activated more often. And it comes from those tokens in the intruder bag. When you draw those tokens that have Queen on them, you're going to be giving additional activations to the Queen, which means she'll be moving at a much more rapid pace. And if you remember from part number 1, we have placed a few of them in the bag. I believe there was 1 in the bag to start, and I believe we added 2 more. So we pulled 1. I think there's 2 more left in the bag, if my memory serves me right. The intruder bag becomes the wild card, not necessarily always knowing when the Queen's going to get that extra activation during gameplay, but the ones you can expect, of course, just like the intruders, are going to be during the intruder onslaught step. She could potentially move from corridors into rooms with characters. She also can move when the event card comes up and you're moving individuals at that point in time. And of course, she'll also attack during the intruder attack step. Now, when we get to a point where we pull a token from the intruder bag and it's the Queen, I'll go through the steps in terms of how we activate the Queen in that situation. There are some rules to follow with that, but let's actually run into it when we do. So let's go ahead and activate the Recon character. For my very first action with the Recon character, I'm going to use a card that is not used in combat. As you can see, there's a gun in the top right-hand corner of this card with next to it. It also doesn't require any additional cards to be discarded. Shoot first allows you to move to an adjacent room, and then once you're there, you're able to make a shot or a burst as part of this action before anything else attacks. The good news with this is it's giving you a free attack because this is part of a non-combat action. So you literally get to do that shot or burst for free, which is pretty awesome. So let's go ahead and move through corridor number 2. We move to the next room. The card that was drawn tells me to place an A, B, or C room, depending on the section, but when you've used up all the A tiles, you're going to draw from the common tile deck, which is the question mark one, and we got ourselves shelter. On this comes a fire marker, so this place is on fire, which is not good for us on a turn-by-turn basis, so we probably want to deal with that. Down below it says for 2 at the shelter, if you do not have a larva on your board, you can remove all contamination cards from your hand here without scanning. A very handy room. The expiration card tells us to make a noise roll. The Recon character has a combat motion tracker, so we avoid any hazard icons on this roll. Let's see what we get. We got ourselves a 4. We had a 1. Actually, we had 2 2s and a 1, but no 4s around us, so we're fine for now. For my second action, I'm going to go ahead and discard these 2 cards here, Search and Rest. In order to move and secure, we're going to head southeast through corridor number 2 right here, down to this one. The reason being, even though I'd love to get into Hibernatorium, I don't have any cards to open and close doors right now with the Recon character, so we cannot get through that door to the right of me, which would probably be the best way to get some separation from the Queen. So we're going to head down the other way and kind of hide behind closed doors as long as we potentially can. Check out what my Recon character found. It was an escape shuttle, although unfortunately it is malfunctioning. So in order to make that work, we're going to have to repair that. For 2 cards, we can escape in the shuttle here. We make a noise roll, get into the escape shuttle, and try to get out. So once we actually have things settled in terms of our main objective, we now have another location to go to get out of here besides the landing zone. So this provides another option for us. Now, what gets a little dicey is the fact that when I put this room into play, I do come in and secure this room, which I did, but you'll see another 2 tile came out. I've got 3 of those, plus a noise token showed up. So if we roll a 2 on any noise rolls, bad news. The exploration card also shows a door in the bottom right-hand corner of that room tile. And something else to mention, you'll notice this yellow barricade up here denotes the fact that we have now moved from section A to section B, which means for the Recon character, oxygen is going to start depleting again. And I'm pretty sure you guys know what's coming. On the card it states to make a noise roll as normal. We're gonna go ahead and roll that noise die and find out what happens. Here's the only thing that can really be beneficial for me. If I get the hazard symbol, I'm okay. If I get a 1, I'm okay. Every other result is going to be bad. So this could be a little scary. Let's see how we do. A 3. Oh, that's bad. Now here's what's interesting. When I'm pulling from the Intruder bag for this corridor number 3, which had another noise token placed in, and when you get 2, you remove it and draw for a Horde. If I happen to get the Queen token, we're going to be activating the Queen, which means no Horde will show up there, which is kind of a good thing. Bad thing being the Queen is starting to get closer and closer. Let's go ahead into the bag and see what we get. Just want to show you that I'm not stacking anything in a weird way. And here we go. We got ourselves the Queen. The good news is you guys get to see a Queen activation, not necessarily the best for me. You walk through a series of steps to see which ones apply. So the very first one is if the Queen is in a room with a character, she's going to attack them. If there's multiple characters, she goes after the first player token character. Whoever's got that, that is the tiebreaker. Now, that's not going to apply here. The Queen is in a corridor. So if the Queen is in a corridor, she's going to move to a room towards the closest character. So the Queen in this situation is going to move from the corridor to the room, and the last thing that could potentially happen is if the Queen starts in a room when she activates, and she again is not able to attack anything, she's going to move from the room to the corridor, again trying to get to the closest character. So she is simply just tracking us down at this point, and I guess the good news is we don't have any more craziness to deal with around where the escape shuttle is, so we might be able to get the heavy gun operator out of here before the Queen causes us problems. I don't really need to worry about the Queen per se. I could go ahead and try and attack the Queen, take it down, but the Queen is tough to kill, so it makes more sense to potentially try and avoid that confrontation as long as possible and get to that reactor room and then try to get out of here. That wraps up the Recon character's turn. We're not in a room with fire, so we don't take a light wound. We're doing fantastic when it comes to wounds. We're still at full health for both characters. We'll see how long that lasts. Likely not very long. And then what I'm going to probably do in the next turn for the Recon character is likely use this to bump up our oxygen levels. For right now, we are going to deplete this from 4 down to 3 as we are in Sector B now, and there is no life support there. That's going to do it. Let's move on to the heavy gun operator. For my first action, I'm going to use repairs here, and it's actually quite tough because I could do this one of 2 different ways with the doors. I could choose to open or close one door in your room or an empty adjacent corridor, so I could literally go ahead and place a door right here, which would stop the Alien Queen from getting to me quicker, but again, once the Alien Queen moves into the door, she will break the door down, so it really just holds her back for one of those movements, and then she'll just be able to pass through later. But the downside is if I put the door up right here, rather than opening this door, I'm not really getting any kind of exit that's really fast for the heavy gun operator. So I think what I'm going to do is open the door here and hope that I can get a card back into my hand later on to be able to shut a door later. I also have another card in my hand that I'm going to try my best to hold on to called Forcing Fire, and this allows me to burn an entire clip in order to remove all adults, drones, or a Queen from my room and place them in a chosen adjacent corridor. So I can basically push her out of the equation if she gets too close. I've gone ahead and opened up the door. I've turned it sideways to denote that that is open. We could come back to it later on and close it if we wish, if we have the right card to do so. Of course, if we split the mini in half, pulling the top half of the mini apart, it's going to let us know that door has been broken down. It can never be opened or closed in that area again. It's basically just a hole that's been shattered. And that can occur when you start having hordes banging up against doors when they move, or a Queen smashing through them as well. Second action, I'm spending a card to discard it in order to do a regular move into the escape shuttle room, and we're going to go ahead and make a noise roll. I'm also fully aware that we could potentially trigger something here. We've got noise around us. Hopefully no 2s or 4s show up on the die. Let's see what we get. We got ourselves a 3. That's going to actually put noise right where we pass through. The heavy gun operator's turn is done and also is now in section B, so we knock down the oxygen down from 4 to 3. Now, as we move to the Recon character, I'm going to go ahead and use the oxygen token from my tactical belt right now to bump this from 3 to 6 to make sure we've got time with the Recon character to go exploring without getting harmed too badly. Of course, if we happen to find the Section B power generator, we'll be able to get life support systems online. That'll keep things happy. But here's the downside. Right now, the heavy gun operator does not have another oxygen tank to use and is currently at 3 as well. So the heavy gun operator is in a little bit of trouble, and I don't really want to push the heavy gun operator too far deep into the sections of the facility if I don't have the oxygen available to keep that character safe. I might even have to backtrack, so this is going to be a fun thing to try to balance. First action for the Recon character, I'm going to use this card right here, discarding it to secure. I can place 2 secure tokens in the room that I'm currently in. We already have one in that room. We can have up to 3. So we now have 3 secure tokens in the escape shuttle room. That should hopefully come in handy later on, or maybe even very soon. And also I've gone ahead right now and discarded that 3 oxygen from the Recon, ticked myself up to 6 oxygen, and you can see using that card I just did to secure this room even further is a wise choice, seeing as we have a bunch of noise around us. I'm going to end off my Recon character's turn right here. I have 1 card in hand. I'm going to choose not to use it, and we're going to tick our oxygen down from 6 to 5. With these known things we need to deal with, what could we potentially do to help us out? Well, we do have a robot sitting in the surgery room. You might be wondering, well, why would a robot be able to help us in this situation? If you remember from setup, the robot is carrying a full ammo clip as well as 1 oxygen tank on it. So if we can get the robot over to our room, we can actually interact with it and take those items. And as you probably remember, the heavy gun operator has a supporting robot starting item card. And so because of that, I can spend 1 card from hand to activate the robot anywhere in the facility. So the robot makes it to the first room, and we'll use a second action, the final card the heavy gun operator has, to discard in order to have the robot move right into the same room. After those 2 actions from the heavy gun operator, I have no more cards in hand, but at least the robot's in the same space for the next round. I can try to interact with this robot with a trade and reorganize action to take what is on the robot to hopefully help out the operator survive with a little more oxygen. The operator's turn is now done. We're going to tick this down to 2 oxygen remaining. We head back to Recon, but Recon passed last turn. It did 1 action and then it passed, so nothing to do there. It comes back to the heavy gun operator, and we're going to go ahead and pass, and that's going to drop us down by 1, so 1 oxygen remaining. Now, as you can see, we're getting quite low with the operator, but we have a plan to mitigate this. I do want to talk about the fact that when you get down to this kind of level of oxygen, you still have a little bit of saving grace there below this. You'll see it can go to 0, then it can go to 0 with an exclamation mark, and then it goes to dead. So you got a little bit of time before you're completely toast. So when you see the 0 with the exclamation mark, it means you are 1 step away from death. That is the reminder. It's worth mentioning that when you go ahead and you increase your oxygen from that 0 exclamation mark, you're going to, in essence, disregard the fact it's on the exclamation mark and still increase your oxygen as if it was going from 0 to 3. And the final thing to remember is if you're on the 0 exclamation mark and the life support systems come online, you simply just uptick yourself to 0. Now in the event phase, at this point, we take a look for intruders in a room with a character. They're going to attack the character. In this case, not going to matter. We move on to fire damage. No intruders are in a room with fire, so no damage being dealt to those intruders. Now the intruders move to the onslaught phase. Corridors that are connected to characters will activate the intruders that are inside of those corridors. At this point, we don't have any, thank goodness, so we can move past this. I pulled an event card and we got reactor overheating. This does not sound good. Now up in the top right hand corner is the first thing we look at. Do we have anything in corridors 4? We do not, so nothing is going to move. Now let's resolve this card itself. It says if there is a malfunction marker in the cooling system room or in the reactor room, start the auto destruction procedure. Thank goodness neither of those apply. It says otherwise place a malfunction marker in each of those rooms, and then you reshuffle the event deck. So a decent event card to get because it doesn't affect us right now beyond just all the discarded event cards and everything we just got going back inside the event deck being shuffled back up. At the wrong time, that card could be really, really bad. So let's go ahead into the intruder bag for bag development. The column there on the far right, we pull out a queen. And what does it state on here? It says activate the queen or add 1 larva token to the bag. Now in this case, both characters are in the same spot. The queen has 2 ways to get there, but it's going to take the path of least resistance, of course. That's going to be the one that leads right past the open door here, so it's going to head up to corridor 2. We now head into round number 5. The first fire marker is going to go back to the heavy gun operator, and both characters drew up to 5. We already had 1 card here, so we just drew up 4 more. So with the robot now in my space, and I really want to get some oxygen on the operator, I'm going to go ahead and interact with that robot. We're going to spend 1 card discarding it to do a trade and reorganize. We're going to go up to the top where the robot card is. You'll see ammo and an oxygen tank. I'm going to go ahead and grab that oxygen tank. And I'm going to immediately use it, bumping me from 1 to 4 on the operator. The second action for the operator will be to repair this escape shuttle. I want to make sure this room is ready to go in case we need it. So we're going to go ahead and discard one additional card. These are the two that I'm getting rid of to discard that malfunction marker. That'll do it for the operator for now. We tick down the oxygen from 4 to 3. Moving on to Recon. Recon character is going to go next. We're going to go ahead and open up the door that leads to the hibernatorium up top there. We're going to use this card along with this one to do repairs. It allows me to open or close a door in your room or an empty adjacent corridor. So right there, we're cracking that one. Next, we're going to use Shoot First. I really like this card when you're moving forward with the Recon character because it kind of gives you that quick attack that you might need. It's a free attack if you need it. So we're going to go ahead and move into the hibernatorium. We're just doing this with a regular move. Recon characters making a noise roll as we move into this room. We have a 1, 2, 3, and 4 corridor all the way around. The 2 corridor already has a noise token, so we really don't want to see that. But we do have our combat motion tracker to stop from the hazard icons. Let's see what we get. We actually landed exactly the one I didn't want to see. We head to the Intruder bag to pull a token for the Horde to find out what we get. Now, as I put my hand inside this bag and shuffle it around, I can feel 2 tokens inside. I know one of them that'll always be there is the blank token. The other one, I can't exactly remember if it's the Queen or an adult. I think everything else is out of the equation. We don't have a drone yet, and I don't think we have any larvas yet. We might have already pulled the 3 Queen ones that I knew of that were in the bag, I think. So maybe it's an adult, but I guess we'll find out in a second. It's worth mentioning you could get the bag down to just 1 blank token. You might be wondering, well, what happens then? You just constantly keep pulling blanks. Well, when you pull a blank and you're doing it for the Horde or you're doing it for the hazard roll or bag development, you're going to add 2 random adult tokens to the bag and then put the blank back inside. So the blank token is giving you a breathing space for just a moment, but later on, more fun's coming for you. So let's see what we get out of the bag here. Hopefully it's nothing bad. It'd be nice to get a break here. We got ourselves a blank token. That's good. I will take it. So nothing we have to deal with at the moment. That's good. And check it out. We have no noise tokens whatsoever around the hibernatorium right now, which is great because I'm trying to get myself to Section C as fast as I possibly can. Now time for my second action if I wish to do so, or I could potentially pass. Worth mentioning, when you're in the hibernatorium, it starts at the very beginning of the game as disabled. You'll see that token above my character there. It's on the disabled side. In order to activate that, we need to find the power generator C. So in the C section somewhere, there's a power generator. We can flip it. That will turn on the hibernatorium, and then we can come back here and spend 2 cards, which is what that ability is underneath of my character there at the bottom portion of that room. If you go ahead and spend 2 cards discarding them, you can roll for noise. And if no intruder shows up, then you can go into the hibernatorium and make use of it. So you've seen the hibernatorium, you've seen the escape shuttle, and you've seen the landing zone. Multiple ways to potentially get out of here, but things can go south quite quickly, and what looks to be a good path can go right down the tubes. And of course, when you get out in these fashions, you're not out until you check your contamination anyway. Now, so far we haven't gotten any contamination, so we're good for now, but we'll see how things go. I'm going to choose to pass rather than do anything else, so we're going to go ahead and tick our oxygen down from 5 to 4. I'm going to have my heavy gun operator do a regular move into the hibernatorium with my Recon character. We'll have to make a noise roll, but at least it should be safe. Although, if we happen to roll the hazard symbol, it will not be. I discarded fast reload for that one, as we're not planning to do any kind of attacking in the near future. We're going to go ahead and make a roll here, and we got the hazard symbol. What in the heck is going on? This is exactly what Nemesis will do to you. You think things are going well until something like that happens. We're going into the Intruder bag right now, and we're going to pull out the first token. We got ourselves a adult token, and looking at the center column here for the adult, it says place 1 adult or drone. Again, depending on which token you pulled out, it's an adult. So that adult is going in the same room, in the hibernatorium with the heavy gun operator and the Recon character. Now, this is really unfortunate because I had passed with the Recon character. I can still make a shot here with the heavy gun operator, but it's just 1 shot attack, which is only at best going to put 1 damage on it. It will not kill it, and I have no more cards. The only way I could continue to play right now is if I burnt this card instead of taking a shot and actually use my adrenaline injection item. But I really don't want to use it right now because I want to use that when we eventually hopefully find the reactor, and I need to really quickly move throughout the map as fast as possible without as much stuff happening. So it's not exactly the best time to use it really. But the downside is if I don't use it, we are going to be taking an attack from this thing. But I might just have to suck it up and take it. What the heck, let's go ahead and make a shot and see what happens. I mean, it is possible I could get a headshot on this thing. Highly unlikely, but it could happen, a 1 in 8 chance. Or I could potentially get the clip icon and lose my entire clip of ammo, which is full in the heavy gun right now. So there's a couple bad things that could happen, but, you know, most of it's relatively okay. Let's go ahead and make a shot, see how we do. We got ourselves, oh my gosh. So I guess thematically, the operator got surprised by this adult coming out of nowhere and then started shooting everything in sight except for the intruder itself. No damage on it, and we burn the entire clip on the gun, which is not good. Again, at any time, I can go ahead and use another clip that I have here to put on the gun, so it's not horrible, but that just burnt an entire clip, which isn't great. That's going to do it for the heavy gun operator's turn. That's 2 actions. We tick down the oxygen by 1. We go back to the Recon character who already passed and nothing happens. We come back to the heavy gun operator who's now going to pass and ticks down another point of oxygen. We start off the event phase with intruders attacking characters in the same room. We know it's going to be targeting the heavy gun operator because the heavy gun operator has the first player token. This is not good. We're going to go ahead and draw an intruder attack card now. Flipping over the card, you simply resolve it based on the symbol. This is an adult, so it looks like in this situation, all of the major ones are pointing towards this effect on the right that says, if you are heavily injured, you die. Whoa. Otherwise, you get a serious wound and a contamination card. Wow, that escalated real quick. This is not really good. The first card off the top of the serious wound deck was a guts injury. This thing got me right in the guts. It's going to go in this first slot right here, covering up all of these. And of course, when you start off, you have your health on the far left-hand side. But when you have a serious wound there, you have to move your marker to the right side of the last serious wound in line. So essentially, this is moving all the way down to here. I've been pushed into the injured state, just like that. Pretty quick. Those serious wounds will push you down the track really, really fast. And on top of the bad news, I'm also taking a contamination card into my discard pile, which I don't like to see. That's going to gum me up for drawing cards later on. Also potentially throws in a loss condition there, which I don't like. And then over here, it also says Guts has each time you pass, you get another contamination card. So every single round that I end off all my turns and pass, I'm taking another card. So I really need to address this, and it's a good thing I have a med kit. It's probably going to make, I'm almost 100% certain I'll be focusing on getting that all patched up. Next up is fire damage for intruders in room with fire. Don't have anything there. Intruder onslaught's going to occur, so anything in a corridor connected to a character's room, they're going to move in. We don't have any situations like that at the moment, so we go to the event card. Not overly happy with the title of this card. It says No Way Out, and guess what's activating? 3. And yes, we actually do have a whole horde sitting down there from part number 1 ready to go. They've been eagerly awaiting being released, and they're simply going to try and activate and move. They can't because they run into the door, so they break the door down. With the door smashed down, they're going to start to move and join the rest of the intruders closing in on us. If that wasn't bad enough, let's now read this card. It states, No Way Out. Place a horde with 4 adults in each corridor adjacent to the landing zone if that corridor is open or connected to a room without secure tokens. That was probably the single worst event card that I could pull right now. And if you remember from part number 1, I actually had a number of secure tokens in the rooms that are connected to the landing zone. Well, guess what? That is going to come back to bite me, that those got removed from a previous event card back in part number 1. As you can see from this one, we're placing a horde of 4 adults in every single corridor adjacent to the landing zone if that corridor is open or connected to a room without a secure token. Now, here's the thing. I did secure this, but because I didn't actually secure the room that's attached to it, I believe a set of 4 still shows up in here as well. This flipping over and securing just stops me from the noise roll affecting that area, I believe. I'll double check on that, but I'm going to take the worst path possible, and we'll retroactively change it later if we have to. So we're going to have a group of 4 adults here, the same here, and the same here. That went from 0 to 100 really fast, and I did confirm that even with the secured corridor, this would still occur. These enemies would still show up here based on the event card, as it doesn't state anything about secured corridors being ignored. So the only benefit for the characters for having this corridor secured is the fact that when these come in as part of an event card like this, they're going to be stuck there because a noise roll is never going to activate them specifically. So they're really only going to become a problem for me if I am next to them in a room. That's when the onslaught phase would happen and one of them would trickle into the room at me. Or if I need to move through this corridor in order to get to the landing zone. So it does still become a problem, and they are kind of annoying even though they're pinned in place for the most part. And as if that wasn't bad enough, we still have to make a noise roll for every single character. We're starting with the heavy gun operator. Let's find out what happens. Heavy gun operator making a roll. We got ourselves a hazard. Oh my goodness, this has been a brutal round. We go to the intruder bag once again. We're going to pull one out, and we got ourselves an adult. We're referencing the column in the middle. It says to place one adult in the room. Recon character's turn now. Let's go ahead and roll the die, see what we get. We got ourselves a 2. And that completes the event card from Hell. Now we move on to bag development. We'll grab another token out of the bag. What do we get? We got ourselves an adult, and based on the reference sheet, an adult says to add 1 queen token to the bag. That's going to do it for the round. We now move on to the 6th round of play. The first player marker has moved to the Recon character, and both characters have drawn up to 5. My Recon character is going to go first. We're going to go ahead and do a shot. We're going to use taking aim. It says make a shoot or a burst, and then you can re-roll the first result. So on top of this, you'll also notice something over here, and I can again do the shot because I have ammo, but you'll see when doing a shoot, you may use an ammo clip to shoot twice to the same intruder. You must decide this before you do your first shot. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to burn the clip that I have, and it does have 2 bullets. If I happen to be a full clip, I'd be burning the full clip. In this case, good time to use it. I'll be able to make 2 shots at the same intruder, and the very first shot is going to get a reroll. The first shot, which I can reroll if I wish, ends up being a 4. Now we'll move on to the second shot and see whether we can get lucky enough to see a 1 or the headshot symbol. That will take out that first intruder I've been targeting here. We got ourselves a 1, so the one I just shot is able to be taken out because the die roll meets or is less than the damage on the intruder. For my second action, I'm going to go ahead and discard this search card in order to do another shoot action. We'll roll the die and see what we can do. We'll probably just be placing damage on this thing, but if we get a headshot, that would be pretty sick. Let's see how we do. We got a 3, so it's just 1 damage. That's my 2 actions. We'll go ahead and tick down our oxygen to 3 for Recon. Also want to mention that I've gone ahead and taken one of the ammo clips in the tactical belt for the Recon character and placed it in the assault rifle. The heavy gun operator is going to go ahead and take a shot here, discarding this card right here. If we see a headshot or a 1 on the die, we've got this thing taken out, and we got a 4, so it's a miss, but we do put a damage on it. Second action for the operator is another shot. We're discarding this search card. We're rolling a die. We're looking for a 2, 1, or a headshot, and we got the 2. That last intruder's gone. It was nice to clear out the hibernatorium, but the bad news is the operator now ticks down its oxygen to 0. We really need to think about moving the heavy gun operator to maybe a different room with oxygen to keep him away from death. We might have to head back to Section A. But for now, the Recon character will go and use a demolition card to take out one of the doors in the room. The second action will be to look for anything useful. Using this card, we can move to an adjacent room. If it's a new room, we draw 1 item of that room color. And check this out. Look what the Recon character found, the reactor itself. Now, the unfortunate news here is that the exploration card that we pulled when I put this in play has it malfunctioning. So it currently isn't working, but we have a noise token placed at the bottom right. You'll see, of course, we cannot place any of the ones going north because this particular room tile is at the top of the map. So we place what we can, and that is going to do it. Except for the fact that I need to pull a card that matches the room I moved into, and you're not going to believe me, but the top card was in fact tools, which allows me to discard a malfunction marker if I spend a card. Well, we're probably going to use this. Now, it's worth mentioning that when we gain a new item, you can choose to put it at the back of the backpack or at the front. So I'm choosing to place it at the front, of course, because I want to be able to make quick use of it very soon. But we still need to make a noise roll as it says on the exploration card. So let's see how that goes. We'll go ahead with a roll here, and we got ourselves a 2. Thanks to the major 2 corridors heading south being 1 and the one going back to the hibernatorium being 4, we are A-OK. And of course, the final thing to do with the Recon character is to tick down the oxygen as we're not in a place with life support. So we drop from 3 to 2. I can tell you right now, I'm really, really happy that I restocked on oxygen and ammo back in the landing zone in part 1 early on. That really helped my Recon character be strong enough to get into Section C. Now, this might be a risky move. I'm going to have my heavy gun operator head southwest back toward the escape shuttle. The operator makes it into the escape shuttle room. We now need to roll for noise. This could be terrifying. Let's go ahead and grab a yellow die, see how it goes. We got 2s being bad, 3s being bad, and 4s being bad. 2s especially, as there's all kinds of corridors around. Let's see how this goes. Come on, die, be with me. We got a 4. In a way, 4 was better than 2, but we still had to place a Horde right here. We had a noise token, another one goes here, we take both of them away. Drawing from the Intruder bag, let's see what lands there. And again, we're looking at the Horde right here to see what happens. The token out of the bag is a blank one. So we're good for now. We add 2 random adult tokens to the bag and then put this blank one back. Talk about stressful. Now here's the question that I have. One thing I could do is I could go ahead and spend 2 cards right now to make a noise roll doing the actual room action to get into the escape shuttle. I have to do the noise, and then of course if there's no intruders in the room, I can then get in the shuttle. The other thing I could do, knowing that I do have a contamination card inside of my discard pile right now, is I could choose to rest in order to scan it and try and get rid of it. Now if it comes up infected when I scan it, then I have to go through the infection procedure. So one has me kind of sticking around for a little bit longer, knowing that my oxygen levels are already at very dangerous levels. And the only thing that can really stop that is for me to head towards a more A section tile, which is going to put me closer to the hordes, which is not probably the best option. I think I'm going to risk it. I really do. I think I have enough time to get in the shuttle and then leave it up to the Recon character to try and get the reactor shut down and then get back, knowing that I have the caffeine pills on the Recon individual. That could be beneficial. I think this is the right call to do. So let's go ahead and try it. We're going to go ahead with 2 cards right now and discard these. Now again, I have a contamination in hand, and at the end of my turn when I pass here, I'm going to have to go ahead and take another one. So if I'm understanding how this works, and the timing of this could be interesting too, but let's go ahead and do these 2 discard right here to actually activate this. So just so you can see the escape shuttle, 2 cards, make a noise roll, and get into the escape shuttle. Again, there can't be any intruders in the room with me. There can be intruders in the corridor, but they can't be in the room. So let's go ahead and make that noise roll. Let's see what happens. We got ourselves a 4. So we got lucky. That worked out. That's good news. So now my character is going to go into the escape shuttle. Now the rules currently state to place the character on the shuttle. I don't know exactly where that is. Taking a look at this actual tile in and of itself, it doesn't look like there's any space specific for that. It likely will be part of the border edges of the game unless I'm missing seeing it. But let's say hypothetically my character is now on the shuttle, because that is what happens. And then at this point what's going to happen is at the end of each round, all the characters that are inside the shuttle can decide to take off. So I'm obviously going to hold still in there waiting for my Recon character to finish up. Now, the thing that gets a little bit blurry in my mind here around serious wounds is that the serious wound I have says once I pass, then I'm going to take an additional contamination card, but I can't pass if I've gotten into an escape shuttle, and essentially I'm just waiting for an end game trigger now, just at the end of every round, deciding whether I want to blast off or not. I don't have to worry about oxygen anymore. I'm not actually doing anything with the heavy gun operator going forward. I am inside the escape shuttle safely. So we're not going to take an additional contamination beyond the one that we already had. We're going to play it like that. Maybe in the final version, you will still take the contamination as you still enter into the shuttle. We'll have to double check that. But for now, I've got 1. So something could mess me over. So now we're back to my Recon character, and my Recon character currently has 1 card left. Now I want to try my best to fix this reactor and then get out of here. I do have those caffeine pills, but I need to play this correctly. So looking at what I've got here, I'm going to have to use the 1 card that I have with the caffeine pills in order to get things going. So using the caffeine pills, it says draw and reveal 3 action cards, scan all drawn contamination cards, and I don't have any with my Recon character currently, so I'm okay there. And then if any of them are infected, you place a larva on your character board and you keep all drawn action cards. So long story short, we're just drawing up 3 action cards. So I've drawn up my 3 cards. I got Demolition, Rest, and Scouting. I've already used 1 action for my turn. I have 1 more action. Let's go ahead and use the tools. We're going to spend this one right here. We need to spend another card with it in order to make it happen. So let's use the Rest one with that. That's going to allow us to discard the malfunction marker there. And at this point, the turn is done. So we're going to go ahead and tick our oxygen levels down by 1. So we're going from 2 to 1. Starting off another turn, I'm going to use my 2 cards all at once to pay for the room action for the reactor. This is a really big one, has big time impacts. By shutting down the reactor, we're going to remove from the game all life support tokens. Every single one of them is going to be taken off the game board for all 3 sections. The auto-destruct token is also going to get removed because now the reactor cannot go critical and cause us to lose the game from that thing exploding. That's a positive. On the other side of the equation, we also remove all the anti-aircraft tokens. Haven't talked talked about this yet, but up in the Hibernatorium, you can see there in the top left, there are 2 tokens stacked. Those are face down. One is active and one is inactive. These are for the anti-aircraft, and basically they trigger, and you look at the top one when the actual round marker meets the lander token on the round track. When that happens, you're going to check to see if the anti-aircraft guns are enabled. If they are, the lander is shot down, and in that case, you've got no chance to get out from the landing zone. If it's disabled, then you're able to get into the lander from the landing zone. So in this case, by removing it, we're actually ensuring that it can land at the landing zone without being shot down. Timing is still key though, and being there at the right moment. So the escape shuttle in this case is probably the best option. And it's only the best option because the Hibernatorium is currently not enabled. It's currently not active. So I can't just walk over one room and jump into one of those, because that would have been a good option. If I had found the power generator C, then I could have enabled the power generator C. That would have kicked on the Hibernatorium there in the center, and I could have just moved there. It would have been a lot quicker. So I have to make a mad dash here to the escape shuttle. So as I mentioned, the life support tokens across the very top of the game board in A, B, and C all being removed now. So there is absolutely cons to shutting down the reactor, but we gotta do what we gotta do. This right here is the auto destruction token, currently not in play because nothing triggered it, but if I had got something that told me that the auto destruction sequence had been initiated, you'd place that token 5 rounds from where you're currently at on the round track, and you'd have 5 rounds to either shut the reactor down or get the heck out. And of course, all the win and loss conditions still apply in those situations. So really at this step right here, when you're removing the auto destruction token, you could potentially just be taking it away from a situation where it's not in use anyway, it doesn't really have much impact, or it might actually be creeping up on blowing up the entire facility. And last but not least, those anti-aircraft tokens are also going to get removed. And that's going to do it. At this point, the reactor's been shut down. We have met all conditions for our main mission card for perimeter clearing. It's stated the reactor must be shut down. We've done this, and all basic rooms A must be explored. Now we just need to get out. But at this point, we need to pass for a second action here with the Recon and go about the typical game structure. As our turn is over, we're going to go ahead and knock oxygen down once more. That's going to bring us down to 0. We're all going to find out real fast whether this strategy actually panned out or not. So right now we head into the event phase. The intruders are going to attack if they're in the same room. They are not. Moving on. Fire is going to hurt intruders in the room with fire. There's none. Skipping past that, the intruder onslaught's going to happen if they're in corridors next to a character in a room. They're going to jump in. That's also not happening, so we go to the event deck. The event card pulled has a 4 in the top right-hand corner, and looking across the game board, we have hordes in 3, we have hordes in 2, that's it. So no one's activating and moving, which is very, very nice. But next up, let's read this one. Leaving the shell. It says each character with a larva gets a contamination card and scans it. Good thing I don't have one. If it was infected, they die. Otherwise, they place that card in their discard pile, so really good thing I didn't have that. Each other character draws 4 cards from their action deck and scans all drawn contamination cards. If at least one of those cards was infected, that character places a larva on their board. Then they place all drawn cards in their discard pile. Now, just before I go ahead and resolve this event card, I want to mention something, because as I read it, I realized this is a pretty crucial event card. It made me want to reread what I read for the escape shuttle usage with my heavy gun operator. So let's just go through this so you understand my mindset here. Again, I'm using prototype rules, so not everything is crystal clear. There's a little bit of assumptions in here. I'm going to do this logically. So inside of the escape shuttle room, it states to make a noise roll. And of course, in the rules, it actually says if there's no intruders in the room after the roll, then you're able to get in the escape shuttle. Now, it is an actual tile or card or something in the final version that you're going to move your character from the escape shuttle room to. I just took my character off it for now because I don't have that tile. I'm assuming that tile or that card will have more information on the shuttle itself in terms of, does it supply oxygen, or are you still taking an oxygen hit if you happen to want to sit in the shuttle for multiple rounds waiting for your friends to join you, right? So things like that are not 100% crystal clear in the rules just yet, but I'm going to assume that if you get in an escape shuttle, it probably has oxygen. You no longer have to worry about it at that point, even though the facility, of course, has completely shut down here because of the reactor. So on the oxygen side of the equation, I'm pretty happy saying that we're fine there. We don't have to worry about that. The thing that gets me a little bit, though, is that I have that guts serious wound, and that thing says that at the end of every single time you pass, in other words, you don't do anything in a given round, you're going to take an additional contamination contamination card. And when I read the specific wording for the escape shuttle, it said that if you don't take off, you haven't technically survived until you declare that you've taken off. So I'm assuming if you sit in the escape shuttle for multiple rounds, you're going to continue to take multiple contamination tokens as you sit there waiting. So that is kind of part of the risk, I would assume. So I'm going to go with that. So we're not going to have to worry about the oxygen, but we are going to take an additional contamination card for the heavy gun operator as a result of the end of the last round. And then when we go ahead and resolve this event card right here, it looks like it could have an impact depending on how the cards get drawn and what gets scanned and whether things are infected or not. And we're only resolving the second paragraph for both characters because we do not have a larva on either of the characters right now. So I've gone ahead and drawn up, because the first player tokens with Recon first, 4 cards. I know I have no contamination cards whatsoever with Recon, so we're safe here. As it states here, we just go ahead and discard these into the discard pile, and that's it. Now we're going to go ahead and shuffle up the heavy gun operator, which does have 2 contamination cards inside, and we're going to draw 4 and see what happens. And we did get one of the 2 contamination cards, so we're going to go ahead and scan this now. We're going to go ahead and scan this card now. We're going to push this into the red scanner. There are 5 rows, and hopefully all we see is gibberish in each of the 5 rows. If we see the words infected, well, we've got problems. So let's go ahead and push this in and see what we got. We do, in fact, have infected across the bottom. I don't know if you guys can see that well, but yes, indeed, it's there. So the poor heavy gun operator unfortunately has a larva on the character board at this point, and the rest of the event card at the very bottom says to reshuffle the entire event deck. With that event card all done, we now go ahead to Intruder bag development. We'll draw a token out of the bag. We got an adult, and based on the reference sheet, that is going to have adding a queen to the bag. And yes, indeed, I actually just stumbled upon it inside the rules for escaping. At the end of the events phase, you have that escaping section. It states if a player is inside the lander or the escape shuttle, they can decide between staying or taking off. We're obviously sticking around because we're trying to get our other character out of there as well. It is enough for one player in a lander or escape shuttle to want to take off. All players in the lander and escape shuttle that has taken off escape the facility, and the game is over for those players. So, as you can see, yes, indeed, I would assume that those effects would still affect them even in the escape shuttle. Now, again, the oxygen, I'm not so sure of. I mean, logically, it wouldn't make any sense that oxygen would be affecting you inside of an escape shuttle at all. So I think that'll be a point of clarity later on. At this point, we go ahead and move on to the 7th round. First player marker moves to the heavy gun operator inside the escape pod and is going to pass because, well, there's nothing to do. And of course, that's immediately going to add another contamination card to the deck. This is probably going to result in a death because of this. The Recon's turn is up next, and I hope that I have enough cards to get myself to the escape shuttle and get in. We're going to go ahead and discard this demolition card to do 1 move from the reactor back to the hibernatorium. Recon makes a noise roll. No hazard icons are going to bother us because of our combat motion tracker. We got ourselves a hazard icon, so it doesn't bother us. Second action is going to be to move again. We'll use Chain of Command, discarding it to move into the room. And this is going to be interesting because we have noise markers in 2, 3, and 4. Again, remember, if we spawn a bunch of stuff, it's not in the room, so we should be able to get out no problem anyway. Here we go with the noise roll. Let's see how this goes. We got ourselves a 4, so that is going to resolve a Horde right here. Or at least it might be a Horde. We don't know. We're going to the Intruder bag to find out. We go ahead and pull a token, and we got the Queen. The Queen is getting closer and closer, and at this point, that's the end of our turn. We knock down our oxygen level, and you're not going to believe this, but the oxygen for the Recon goes to a 0 exclamation mark, so we are still just on the brink. I don't think it's overly shocking knowing exactly what I want to do here with the Queen bearing down on me and the Hordes. We're going to dive into this escape shuttle. We need to make a noise roll and have no intruders show in this area. So let's go ahead and do that noise roll. We got ourselves a 3. That is going to trigger this one right here. So we'll go ahead and draw from the intruder bag. Let's see what we get. This should be quite interesting. We got ourselves an adult token. And when you get an adult token, you simply flip it over to the other side to tell you how many adults go into the corridor for number 3. We've got that set, and we're all done. So the Recon character joins the heavy gun operator inside of the escape shuttle, and because we're inside the escape shuttle, I'm going to assume the Recon character does not take a point of oxygen hit, which would have killed that individual. So we got in there just in the nick of time, and at this point we have to go through an entire event phase all the way to the very end to see whether we can actually launch and get out of here. Let's roll through the event phase and see how things pan out. The first thing the intruders are going to do is they're going to attack characters in the same room with them. That's not the case here, skipping past that. Next up is fire markers will hurt the intruders. That's not the case here, skipping past that. Next up is intruders onslaught. How this works, as you know from previous rounds, if there are characters in a room and intruders in a corridor next to it, those intruders are going to get angry and one from each horde is going to come into the room and then automatically attack one of the characters. Now, somebody out there might be thinking, hey, wait a minute, they're in the escape shuttle. Wouldn't one of these two come into the room right now and immediately attack them? Well, based on the prototype rules, you're saying in the prototype rules that when you actually use the escape shuttle room action and leave the room, you go to an escape shuttle tile that's off to the side of the game board. And my assumption is it's not going to trigger anything in the onslaught phase because you are sealed off and protected. You're just waiting to launch off at this point. So nothing's going to happen in the onslaught phase as there's no characters in a room right now. We now move on to the event card, and the one off the top of the deck is Egg Protection. We have number two corridors are going to activate, and these guys are going to, I assume, run towards me, although it's not going to matter much. Now, being that we're not on the game board right now, I don't think that move even matters. We probably wouldn't do it in most cases. Again, things like that will be clarified in the final version. But for now, I've moved all of the horde that was inside of 2 up here to where the queen was. That's the only thing that's happening here. Then next, Egg Protection is going to say if any character is in the nest, place 2 drones there. Place 1 drone in each open corridor section C with at least 1 horde. None of that applies. All players are going to make a noise roll. Again, another thing to question, do we make noise rolls when we're sitting inside the escape shuttle ready to launch off? I don't know. I'll go ahead and do it anyway, just to be safe. Now I'm looking at the noise roll for the reference sheet and I'm realizing quite quickly that it really doesn't make any impact whatsoever. If my characters are not in play and they've moved from the room, then all these things that could happen from the noise roll, which is activating the queen, placing a new adult in a room, placing a larva in a room, or adding 2 adult tokens to the bag, have 0 impact on things, which just further confirms my suspicions that nothing is really done with the characters once they're in the escape shuttle. So we then go to the development bag step, and at that point we'd be pulling out a token, taking a look at the reference card, going, okay, do we put something back in the bag? And then we move to the escape. And at the escape point in time, this is when we can decide as the characters that are inside the escape shuttle, do we want to take off? And yes, we do. So here we are at the end game and the final contamination check. It states that the game ends after the 14th round or when all characters are dead, hibernating, or have escaped using the lander or shuttle. We are in the latter category of all of that mess. All characters who have survived make a final contamination check. To perform this check, you scan all your contamination cards in your deck. If any of the scanned cards from your deck is infected, place a larva on your character board. Players who already have a larva don't have to scan their contamination cards. So we know we have absolutely no contamination cards with a Recon character, and we know we already have a larva on the heavy gun operator, so we can just keep moving on through this check. The next thing to do is after that, each player with a larva on their character board shuffles their whole action deck with all contamination cards they have and draws 4 cards. If any of the drawn cards is a contamination, no matter if the card is infected or not, there is no need to scan them anymore. The character is dead and all other characters survive. All right, we're going to shuffle these cards up real good, and we're going to see what we get for our 4 cards. We'll just split the deck halfway or so. Let's see what we have here. First card off the top is a contamination. Oh my gosh, that didn't take long. So the heavy gun operator is killed off, and the Recon character survives. Literally inside the deck, there was 1 more. So the odds of that were actually quite low, but magically we still pulled it. So the heavy gun operator did not make it out. The Recon character did make it out. The game and the ending of this one was very fun and very thematic in how it ended as well. It was very cool to see the heavy gun operator take that gut wound and then basically head back to the escape shuttle and hold tight while the contamination cards were coming in, and also just hold off from taking off to allow the Recon character to get to the reactor, to take it down, and then to get back in order to actually win the game. The Recon character was able to survive thanks to the sacrifice of the heavy gun operator. So pretty cool, very thematic that way, and this was a lot of fun, and things could have twisted multiple times here. I mean, we could have easily gotten cards when we were pulling for the event cards that would have triggered corridors, that would have pushed these hordes, especially the queen one, that much faster. I think we got lucky on the event cards. The queen was still moving quite a bit from the intruder bag, but the event cards were helping us in that they weren't seeing seemingly triggering the corridors the queen was in as often as I might have thought it would have happened. So in another play, and I have played this actually previous to filming this one, and I will be playing this more, I guarantee you that will probably be different every single time I play, and there'll probably be cases where the queen just barrels down on you. There is a whole section of rules around how you fight the queen and take her down, but she is not an easy fight. So it was probably in our best interest to do what we did and just try to avoid her. That's going to do it for the GameFound preview. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really hope this was informative. If you have any questions whatsoever on the gameplay you saw here or anything that you've seen throughout the entire series, I really just hope this helps you make an informed decision on the game in depth, seeing this thing from multiple angles, whether it was from the prototype unboxing, the how to set up video of how to get this thing to the table, and then the 2 videos covering the actual gameplay itself. Really hope this helps you decide. Let me know in the comments if it was worthwhile and you guys definitely found it valuable. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.